This poem is called This Is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams. And in this poem, the speaker explains that he's eaten plums that were in the icebox, and then he says the person listening to the poem probably didn't want him to eat those plums, and so he asks for forgiveness, and then finishes by talking about how delicious the plums were to eat. And the first thing that you can notice about this poem is that throughout the entire poem, the diction is really simple and straightforward. He just talks about like plums, the icebox, breakfast, like they're all very easy words to follow. And then the syntax is also very minimal and direct. It's just like a very simple sentence. The whole thing is just not confusing about what he means. He's just telling you exactly what he thinks. And initially, he avoids a lot of description and emotion. So all of these words really just try to tell the reader exactly what happened without letting them know too clearly how the speaker feels about what they did, or even much about what the scene looked like beyond the basic action of eating the plums. But there's two noticeable changes to this pattern. The first one is when the speaker says, "Forgive me." That's a noticeable change because suddenly he's packing in a lot more emotion. The line "forgive me" suddenly makes it seem a lot more serious than it has before, because "forgive me" creates the sense that he's done something really bad and he feels really sorry about it. And then right after, the change in pattern is when he talks about the delicious, so sweet, and so cold plums. And all of these represent the second noticeable change in the pattern, because suddenly there's a lot more description. And suddenly he's really leaning into explaining exactly what those plums that he originally described in a really basic way, now he's talking about how incredibly sweet and tasty they were. And so that helps us understand the speaker's tone. So at first, the tone is really striving toward flatness and neutrality. That's what the diction and syntax, avoiding a lot of description and emotion, being so minimal, that's really trying to just create a totally flat, neutral tone that doesn't really tell you much about how the speaker is feeling. But then, there's actually a tone shift, and it happens right here in the poem. And the tone shifts to become a lot more teasing. It's both playful and a little rude. So when he gets to talking about the plums, this "forgive me" seems to be pretty sarcastic, because he wouldn't ask for forgiveness and then make the listener feel worse by talking about how sweet those plums are. So he's kind of messing around with them, but it's also kind of rude because he says that the speaker or the listener didn't want him to eat those plums. So to be really leaning into describing them and their deliciousness and sweetness is kind of messing around, and it's kind of funny and kind of, just like teasing, but also it's designed to be a little rude. What that allows us to see is how from the beginning of the poem, "This is just to say," the whole time he's been kind of snarky, and "this is just to say" might try to seem casual or polite, but in reality, after you understand the end of the poem, you understand that it's really faking. It's just faking that sort of casual, polite tone. And all of this together can let us understand the speaker's voice, which is best described as a snarky child. He's familiar with the listener. He understands that they were saving the plums for breakfast, so he knows them pretty well, and he knows that they're going to be annoyed, and so he fakes a kind of casual innocence, and ultimately he's as irritating and gleeful as possible. This is actually about his tone. He fakes being just casual and nice about the plums so that at the end it's as annoying as possible when he leans in and kind of rubs in how delicious those plums were.